So definitely was very fixated on the brain, and I did a lot of studying, and also came to some kind of understanding, and I call this the human directive. And I specifically focused on the brain, neuron activity, brain activity, and how it manifests within ourselves. So to give you a quick summary, the human directive is macro mindset, and then micro decisions from that macro mindset. So the macro is the mindset of desire, and the micro is the decisions from that macro mindset. And what I mean by that is that my friend, which I said earlier, that was so weak to lust or to girls, right? It's that's his directive. That's his macro mindset, that he cares. All the stuff he cares about in the world could be summed up to he just wants a girl. All the stuff he does, his dreams, his passions, somehow, somewhere, you can align it to the macro mindset. Somewhere, like whatever job he wants it because it's aligned with getting him a girl. So you start to see, if you really know a person and can understand the macro mindset, you can start to see why they made these decisions. Because all these decisions, life decisions, what they want to do in life, where they want to go, what they like to do, is kind of based on the macro mindset. So if a guy really cares about finances, money, you're going to start to see a lot of his decisions are going to stem from money, success, wealth, stuff like that. If a person really cares about power, a lot of his decisions are going to be based on power dynamics. So I start to see this. So I start to say, okay, so he really cares about girls. And so I started to really reflect on his life. I've known this friend for like 5+ years. And so I reflected on his decisions, his personal decisions, how he executes, even in games, even in life, even in career. And it seems a lot like similar mindset all through it. You know, the same way of how he would play a game like Monopoly would be the same way of how he would try to interact with a girl. And I started to see, like, interesting. So I started to try to break down his decisions and who he is and what he's trying to be. And it all goes back to the macro mindset. So that's why I say it's like our brains is like a processor. And we're processing the information. And let's just say the program he's running is lust, you know. And that lust is kind of controlling all his decisions. Okay? Not all of them, but they're influencing them. And I call this the human directive, and I base this on the brain. I started to really like reflect on, like, if you look at characters and other people's lives, and then you can try to understand the patternistic output of the decisions that they make, you start to see, like, oh, this person is really focused on this, or this person really cares about this, because their actions are going to show what they really care, what they really desire. Don't focus too much on how they're doing it. Focus on what they're getting. Focus on the solution of their problem, the solution of their life, the outcomes. And I started to see, like, oh, okay. And so I really could start seeing the human nature of people, because if you start to focus on where they're trying to go, and you start to see what's the common element in all their decisions and what they want to be in life and how they present themselves in life, their characteristics, their aspects, you start to see it usually has a common element. And I'm not saying, like, obviously people are a little bit more complicated than what I'm saying, but I 100% believe in the human directive. And so I started to really be able to see, like, for example, when it comes to the brain, someone who really likes, you know, joy or happiness, they're really addicted to the chemical of happiness, the chemical of joy. And same thing, like the chemical the brain releases when someone is lustful, or they're really addicted to these chemicals. Like, addiction can go to the chemical release element of our brains. And so it's like my friend, he's focused on lust or girls because it gives him a certain type of feeling, and he focuses consistently on that feeling, and he cares so much about what he feels or how it makes him feel, or that desire, that all his decisions gets mutated to that. They get influenced by that. Okay, and so then I really noticed that, and then I created my theory of the human directive, and then I started to understand, okay, why people make their decisions, why he's making this decision, because now I kind of figured it out that he's making this decision ultimately because of the brain chemistry of his intention and his desire, and he's the weakest to lust, or the woman desire. And I'm like, okay, now I got it, but it still didn't answer a question for him, because now I'm on, well, even if all that is true, the human directive and this desire, what put it there? Like, how did it get there? Once again, though, why is he so prone to focusing on that desire? Why girls? Why not food? Why not cigarettes? Why not chocolate? Why not experience? Why not thrill? Like, why is it girls? And I started to really think, like, who's putting those desires into us? And when we encounter the information that we're so weak to it, or we're so overcome by it. And then that's when I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand what's going on. Essentially, what's going on is that there's something deeper than the mind, than the brain. There's something deeper than these chemicals, that we have stored information inside of us. Who's putting that stored information there? How is it coming? You know? And that's when the real divinity started to begin. That's when I started to really question things. Like, who am I? Where do I come from? Why do I have certain predetermined information to things? Why is it stored within myself? Why is my friend like this and not some other way? Did something happen in his life? And you start to understand, like, there's a combination of things of how people grow up in childhood. Because I know childhood really affects the personality you become. But childhood doesn't affect no matter what happened in your childhood, there are just some things that you're drawn to. And I keep going back to it, but like blueberries, nothing in my childhood would have stopped me from liking blueberries. Even if I had a traumatic event with blueberries, I would have still liked them. It's just now attached an emotional event to them. But no matter when I encountered blueberries or encountered chocolate, I was going to like it. Why? Why is that? I started to really think, why are things predetermined for me to have certain desires to them? Because everybody's different and like different things. Like, girls or lust don't have as much power over me than some of my other friends. Or like food doesn't have so much power over me than some of my other friends. And I started to see the desires. And I started to compare through my human directive method on the desires of people and decisions they make. And it started to make a lot of sense. I started to understand why my friends or why people I know make the decisions they make. I couldn't understand it at first, but this is when it started to really go down, because I started to understand that there's something deeper within us than just the brain. And the brain does not, is not going to hold that information within us. It's not like the brain is determining me liking blueberries or chocolate or being weak or strong to this. No. There's something deeper. And I started to like get a revelation of like the brains. And I don't know if anyone ever seen Futurama, and then there was like brains taking over. And I created a weird simile that I don't know how, but after I surpassed it as something deeper, I started to really think that the brain has power, that the brains are interconnected somehow, that reality itself is connected by our processing of this information. That this is when it got really weird, because I started to think the sky, the moon, the stars, the ocean, the elements are all created and maintained through the processing of the mind, through the processing of the brain. Meaning that the reason why the sun exists is because the information of the sun is within the humans and within us, and not just the human, but within the consciousness of all things. And that's why the sun exists. That's why the moon exists. And I started to really gain some understanding that the reason why existence is here is because essentially that information is stored within every living being, and it reflects in physical reality. So in a sense, we are creating physical reality. And I don't know how I got to this understanding. It just came out of nowhere, and it just really gave me a bizarre feeling. And that's when I started to move past that and go to the next thing, which is talking about the mind. Okay, that's part 3. Boom.